Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
There's no award, as I said, for who has the most. All our kids have been exposed to trauma. That's by definition. They're different, whether and not the traditional definitions of trauma besides those: violence and neglect, discrimination, poverty, all of it. So, and you just walk down the children's court and you see what's in the crowd there. It's like it's heartbreaking, and especially little kids, elementary age kid, talking tough. In other words, he's already turning his ability to feel. That's why. I don't know. I guess I'm talking about resilience. Some of these kids have amazing resilience despite what they've been through. I think I would have been crushed had I had a fraction of what this kid's been exposed to. And he's still fighting. It may not be in the way we see, and there's no guarantee of the outcome. But that doesn't mean we should stop trying.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm A Casa, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way A Casa works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things Casa.
Hi, this is Jake Eberly, the producer of the Bonus Babies podcast. And in this episode, Jayne speaks with Dennis Rosenbaum, a school psychologist for 38 years. And he's gone from helping hundreds of kids a year to now being able to focus on just one, being a casa. You could definitely say he's an advocate for children. Here's his story.
Okay, we're on. I am here with Dennis Rosenbaum. Yes, he's on. Yes.
Jayne, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm really glad you're doing this too, and or rather that I talked you into it. There was a little bit of vetting process with you. I don't know if you realize that.
I do not know.
Yeah, you basically said, let me review the podcast, have a listen, and then let's talk about your intentions and goals or something like that.
Okay.
Not exactly vetting, but it was I was more like, okay, that's fair enough. He's got to check out, see what I'm doing, right?
Right.
And
did I pass?
That's why I asked you, because
okay, right.
As you've now heard me say a few times, I admire the heck out of you. I can tell you're.
Oh, thank you. That's kind.
I can tell you're a really good casa. I know you from our support group that meets once a month for other casas.
Oh, thank you.
I learned from you a lot. I think the other casas do as well.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Does that surprise you?
Well, I mean, it was never expressed. I mean, I think hopefully we've all contributed. I mean, I learned a lot also, but that's so nice that you were willing to share that. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about who you are. How were you raised? What was your family life like?
I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, in a middle-class Jewish household. I came of age in the 1960s, and I say that because it's not unrelated to my work during my career, but my work, more importantly now, my work now as a casa. Even though the Jewish community was vibrant and there are a lot of good things about Cincinnati, but growing up there in the 60s and becoming conscious and hopefully socially conscious, one of the things that happened in Cincinnati in the 60s and probably in a lot of areas was white flight. And I was very much aware of it, especially as a fifth grader, and I experienced it so that it made me aware of inequities, even as a kid in the town that I was growing up in. I mean, I had a lot of, despite being middle class, I had a lot of privileges. I went to a college preparatory integrated high school. You had to pass a certain test to reading and English to go to that test. It was a terrific experience. It was not the high school of my neighborhood, But it also, during that time, made me aware that Cincinnati now and then was a segregated city, not unlike a lot of metropolitan cities, Los Angeles included. Especially back then, it was less hidden. There was, I think in 1968, which I would have been 17, there was a Fair Housing Act, but it wasn't until many years later that that was even enforced. So I saw the segregation in equitable opportunities for persons that didn't look like me. And my parents struggled, but they both completed college. And back in the early part of the 20th century, or even the middle part of the 20th century, that was an infrequent occurrence for parents to have completed college. So as a result of that, my parents, to both my brother and myself, really emphasized education. And so similarly, I was very aware that some kids, a lot of kids, did not have the educational opportunities I had. So,
Brett, let me ask you, so you ended up becoming a child psychologist. You were
a school psychologist.
Yeah, a school psychologist for 38 years. So how did you happen upon that?
Well, when my major in undergraduate school, which was in Nashville, a university which my parents could not afford, I attended a Vanderbilt University, and I only learned years later that they were paying for my education many years after I had graduated.
Oh,
but
why,
so
really? Wow.
So I knew I was interested in psychology. I was interested in clinical psychology, and school psychology was a relatively new field. In the 60s, there wasn't really school psychologists. There were psychometrists who were testers. But school psychology became a new field when in the early 70s, there were a number of class action lawsuits that eventually resulted in 1975, which was a year after, maybe was the year I graduated with my advanced degree, what was called the Education for All Handicapped Act, which later became the Individuals with Disability Educational Act, which we all work with if we have a child with special needs. So I chose that path. I know there's some decisions, there may be more than some that I regret, but that was great. I had a wonderful experience with that. And I did my internship in Dayton, Ohio. But then I came out to Los Angeles and then came upon limited English speaking kids of many more variability with respect to ethnicity than there was in Cincinnati. So it was an eye-opening experience for me. It was a learning experience for me. It was a wonderful experience with me. It was at times frustrating. And for about 21 of those years, I worked as a field school psychologist, and part of it
so what
was
does that
called
mean when you say a field psychologist?
Field psychologist meant I worked in schools anywhere from preschool to, or from elementary to secondary schools. Whereas in CASA, we concentrate on, one case perhaps, or two at the most at a time. During the first 18 or 19 years of my career before I became a specialist, I was doing maybe 80 to 100 cases a year. It was different, but a different kind of thing than we do with CASA, but there were similarities.
Right, so we're talking about thousands of kids ultimately.
Yes, right.
Wow.
Absolutely. So
yeah, and can you tell me about the AtRisk student intervention work that you do?
Sure. The AtRisk student intervention unit, which one of my mentors was kind enough to refer me after I had done field work to an opportunity that was in downtown Los Angeles. And the at-risk student intervention unit was originally called AB 922, which was a state law that said that kids who had been expelled from school had to be provided educational opportunities as well as services to help them, in part, get reinstated. Because prior to that time, kids that were expelled were often lost to school systems. We never saw them again. People would say, "You're out of school," and then they might be told you have to stay home for an inordinate amount of time or whatever, and then they just got lost in the system. And this law said, you need to care for these kids because they're especially vulnerable, and see that they get what they need to be reinstated and keep them in the school system. So I was fortunate to be part of a multidisciplinary team that included an attorney. She was terrific. Special education administrator, he was terrific. There were social workers, they were terrific.
Everybody was terrific, and you were terrific, I know. So,
well, thank you for saying. I mean, I don't even think of those terms, but it was just a wonderful experience working with all those people, and I did that for 3 years before finally going into administration, and that was a great experience too.
Yeah, you are a very passionate person, and from what I've seen, and you actually described yourself. You said you're intense when you play and intense when you work. So, what does that mean to you?
You know, it means that for the other times, whatever that is, I can be non-focused. Intense for me means laser focused, and I get really serious and focus what I'm working on. I'm fortunate that I have a sense of humor, and so the staffs that I worked with, we could keep things light and soft, and keep them laughing. And I did a lot of parent presentations, and I knew that the sense of humor was a good way to get them in. They had their hands full with kids they were trying to help at home and at school. But when it came down to business, I was very serious. And when I say during play, if I'm a big sports person, so if I'm playing basketball or baseball or different things I love, I'm serious when I'm down there. I mean, I have fun too, but I am focused on what I'm doing.
All right. So are you very competitive?
There is a competitiveness to me, but I'm too old now, and nobody's going to confuse me with Michael Jordan. I'm okay. I'm pretty good, but I can be competitive, but not obnoxious.
So you said something also that I thought was very interesting. You said you always work to preserve others' dignity.
Right.
So tell me about that, and tell me about that in your CASA work.
I won't say I always worked, and I think one of the great things about CASA is that we're never too old, especially if it applies to me or something, to learn new things. And I had I don't know if it was an inflection point, but I mean, there were a lot of instances. But about 2 years ago, I had a meeting at a school, and as CASAs, we're advocating vigorously for our kids, correct? I mean, we're ardently, and I know you're the same way.
Yes.
And I can tell that it's visceral. I can feel it. I'm no exception there. And so at this particular meeting, which was a point where the kid I was working with kept getting thrown out of schools. This is not to condone what he did or did not do, but here all these administrators were situated at this table, and both from this particular school district and from the school, happened to be a non-public school in this instance, and I basically made it clear in no uncertain terms that what was being proposed was not in the best interest of the child I was working with. And here was all these administrators there. And then I said, which could have been off-putting, that not only is it not in the best interest, but you are actually advocating for policies that are inconsistent with your own policy, with your own district policies, which are based on law. So that could have been off-putting to these persons, especially, the way I was presenting it. I mean, they were all listening, and I tried to make it clear as best I could that I wanted to work with them. I was not threatening or saying we're going to do this. I felt it, and I told them. I said, I know your interest, even though I was pointing out the things that I thought were in violation of their own policy, that their interest was the child too. And what can we do to rectify this situation? This needs to change. And they ended up saying, by the way, we want you to know you're invited back here anytime you want to be here, which could have been. And we even, two of us even went out to lunch, which would, in the beginning of the meeting, that would have been an impossibility. So we didn't sit as far apart as Putin and Biden or all these things that are going on right now. But it was quite a distance. And I realized I had to bridge this. And these are people, we're going to disagree with people with whom we are working, but we need to work with them again. And or maybe it'll be a different situation or different child. And so it doesn't mean going back on our principles or what we want to do on behalf of our child, but it's being firm, doing our homework, and then doing it in a way that we don't become condescending. And I've had to learn from experience. This is another thing that we learn as we get older, how I can improve in certain ways where people were off-put and didn't want to communicate to anyone. And regardless of their contribution to that in different instances, I wanted to take a look at what I was doing wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How'd you get involved in CASA? You mentioned something about your brother and sister-in-law.
When I was retired, I was trying to think how I could, besides the experience as a practitioner in a school district, and besides maybe teaching later on too, because I had done that at the university level, I thought, what could I do? And then it was my brother and sister-in-law who said to me, Denny, they were very familiar with CASA. My sister-in-law was with Alliance for Children's Rights, and my brother is a civil rights attorney and a constitutional law professor, and so they had a good knowledge about this and and especially about CASA. They were very aware of it. They said, Denny, this will be right up your alley. And then I found out there was going to be a training period and all this, and I said, I don't know if I want to do this, and just whatever the usual. Right.
It's like,
and then I did it. I went into it, and in large part, not only the content of the training, but the trainer I had, which was Lynn
Gabriel.
Wow, Lynn Gabriel,
she's fabulous.
And
yeah.
I just don't have enough superlatives to describe her. Just so, again, like I hope that I did when people with whom I worked in my career. She made it fun, but it was intense, and there was a lot of serious work there, and we had fun. But there was a lot of homework and a lot of work that we needed to do if we were going to continue this. And so hopefully I remain in contact with her and friends, and she's just been a wonderful.
Yeah, they're terrific mentors and terrific resources. So can you tell me a little bit about your kiddo? What's the situation?
Sure. My young man is a 14-year-old youngster. I think I first had him when he was about 10 or 11.
Right. So your case is like mine, because they're very often cases are only about 2 years, but until they're closed is the term. But mine's still open. With my little girl, and yours is a long case too.
Right.
It's unusual.
And
yeah.
This is a young man with a tough exterior, but a heart of gold if you can get to it. So it takes him a long time to trust people. I may have said this in our support group, but the first time I met him, he tried to put me off. He said something which was like, with no context, profanities and all this other stuff, and another kid said to him, hey, you better be nice to your CASA. He might get you stuff. So right. So that's because that's the top of their job description, right? Be sure to get stuff. And so,
get stuff. Yep.
Get stuff. So I saw that, and he was exposed to violence and things he should not be seeing as a child. This was before me, but in reading all this, and he has been sent from one residence to another, from one school to another. He escapes all the time, whether it's from a van or from a school, I think because he doesn't want us to see how scared he is. And he wants to be in control. And because as any kid with trauma, they're not in control of all these horrible things that happens to them. And that's the thing about trauma, is that from my perspective, it's experience or accumulation of experiences that's a child cannot integrate because they're too much. It's too much. But that experience is, again, from my perspective, part of that kid's psyche and physiology for life. And there are ways to address it, but they have ramifications in terms of physical, psychological things for the rest of his or her life.
Yeah, and there's a lot of science to back that up, too.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of science.
Absolutely. And I think one of our persons was talking about, she learned that in our last session from the preschool
That's right.
thing. So,
yeah, that's right. Courtney was mentioning that.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
what I appreciate the way you're speaking about him, and I've noticed this before, is that in spite of maybe a lot of acting out or some perhaps very bad behavior, you see him as a person who deserves attention and care, and not like he should just snap out of it and get better.
Right.
Right.
I had a visit just last weekend, and he completely shined me on. After some good visit, and he just went. I saw as soon as he came out the door with the person who guides him, he seemed agitated. But when I drove home, blaming myself for, okay, what can I do? And I do need to do some things different. Everything that he did in retrospect, he was trying to show that he was in control. Like if I said, well, let's go outside. No, we're not going outside. Or do you want to, no, do you have some news for me? Otherwise, he was letting me know who's in control. And so later when I called the clinician and coordinator for her, and they've been extremely helpful, they came up with some helpful suggestions for me. And frankly, they were right about some things. And they said, by the way, you need to let him know he's in control, which was this exact same thing we were talking about. Or whether I was thinking, I thought, I missed that part. So, and he was also part of the juvenile justice system, and that's been dropped. And that was that was due to, in large part, to he doing what he needed to do to get that dropped, but also a wonderful team, not only of the Casa person who works with dual advocacy, but of Children's Law Center. They had just a super team. I was just,
Yeah, they're impressive, very impressive, yeah.
They're terrific,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Mm. Yeah, it's been my experience too. The attorneys whom I've worked with are so dedicated, so bright,
right.
so, really, they're just amazing.
Right. And the aunt for this child, the family, I have a very good working relationship with. I've always had really good rapport with him. And about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, she'll confide in me. And she said, can I trust him? Meaning me. He wanted to know, he asked his aunt. And that's because I don't look like him. And she was saying, yeah, there's a lot of people that don't look like us that we can consider part of our family. Now, whether that translates to the next day, but it was sobering for me. It meant that I had to have a new awareness, just like, that was a poignant moment for me. Like, this has been his experience, instead of saying, why wouldn't you trust me or this or that? That's been his experience. Probably most of his teachers, most of the people in residences, most of the people in charge of things that are important to him do not look like him. And we kind of take that for granted, just like I did the privileges that I had growing up, despite our income, which was struggling, but there was a racial privilege that a lot of white persons take for granted.
Yeah, so how is it now? Do you feel you've made a big difference in his life?
One of the hard things, some of the things that I think I've been able to make, hopefully, a positive difference, I don't know that he's even aware of, as far as fighting for certain things in the courts or school. I need to do better in terms of continuing to work on establishing rapport with him so I can reach him because he's getting older on a different level. So yes, I feel like I've made a difference, but I don't think he's necessarily aware of those things. He's kind of tangentially, but that's too bad for me. That's just okay. It's like, I'm sure there are people that did that for me and I'm not even aware of it. So, but in his case, I certainly, he heard me speak up in court the other day, and the attorney said to me, she said a very complimentary thing to me regarding what I had to say, but she also said when they heard him speak that several of the attorneys were in tears. And because they saw, me too, I saw I said, we're in the judge. I haven't seen this kid that's talking the way. Now, even if he was, from my perspective, even if he was coached, that's okay from my perspective. If he knew that he needed to say this in court that's important. And so whether he's going to follow through on it may not be totally through his own control, but it's just like I would tell kids in the high school where I worked or junior high school, look, you don't talk the same way in the locker room that you do when you're going for an interview. You know that, right? So if he said these things, and I've never seen him so thoughtful, articulate, thinking about his future, even if he, again, talked about his own faults, what he could do better. I thought, I had the wrong courtroom for a second. I had to look.
Yeah.
So it was really nice, and that's why the attorney said the other attorneys were crying. They had seen here he was someone in the juvenile justice system. So, I still have a lot of work to do with things that I could do to improve. And that's why I asked they provided me some assistance, or they provided suggestions that I asked for. We're working as a team.
Yeah, I've felt, and perhaps you have too, that actually becoming a Casa has made me a better person. Has that been true for you?
Jayne, isn't that true? Yes. I was just talking to somebody. Absolutely. Yes. For sure. I see you're getting emotional. Yes?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a gift. Okay.
Yeah.
From my point of view, that's terrific. And I see how conscientious you are at our meetings. Hopefully we're becoming more human, right? Constantly. Yeah. And becoming more aware of our own fragilities. I mean, I let me put it this way. There's no award, as I said, for who has the most. All our kids have been exposed to trauma.
Right.
That's by definition.
Yes.
They're different, whether, and not the traditional definitions of trauma besides those, violence and neglect, discrimination, poverty, all of it. So, and you just walk down the children's court and you see what's in the crowd there. It's like, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And especially little kids, elementary age kid, talking tough. In other words, he's already turning his ability to feel. That's why I don't know. I guess I'm talking about resilience. Some of these kids have amazing resilience despite what they've been through. I think I would have been crushed had I had a fraction of what this kid's been exposed to. And he's still fighting. It may not be in the way we see, and there's no guarantee of the outcome, but that doesn't mean we should stop trying. And as I was driving home from my disappointing session I thought, okay, I need to give this up and give it. And that's why our group is so great. I think I ordered a new box of Kleenex for myself, just when but you have to get over that and say, take yourself out of the equation. I'm sure this may have happened to you, but there have been times when he has triggered my buttons intentionally. But first of all, how clever to do that. He did not, and he will say something that was, I'm a human being, it hurts. But I have to take that somewhere else. I can say to him, and which I will, and I did in my career, say, that was hurtful. That was kind of hurtful, but he's testing the limits all the time. And kind of raising the ante, like from my perspective, again, will you like me if I do, how about if I do this? How about if I say this? I'm going to keep.
Right. Will you still like me if I do that?
That's right.
Will you still like me
if I do this? Same kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yes. And you have to be aware because sometimes their level is going to get dangerous that they will do. That's how desperate they are feeling, that they will have to do this because they can't believe that we don't dislike them for what they did. I mean, another thing, Jayne, that I think about is that, whether these kids get adopted or if they are in a nice school or residence, good can't undo what's their past. It's palliative. It improves things. It can stabilize things. It can give them new, healthy experiences. But that stuff just doesn't disappear. It's like telling somebody to cry. Well, not to stop crying. Where do we think those tears are going to go? They're back in the system. They didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's for sure. Can you tell me about, you mentioned this when we spoke, The ripple of hope. How is that? What does that mean to you?
Again, going back to what I witnessed in the 60s. You weren't born till like 30 years later, right? So you were still
yeah. I'm really 12. I'm a 12-year-old Casa. I'm just very precocious. Right.
Yeah. Right. I'm the only one that they don't card when we go to the meetings. They say, "Yeah, we know you're just like." So, I grew up admiring JFK, RFK, MLK, and some others, but I don't ever think there was a better human or political speech than Robert Kennedy, RFK, gave at the Day of Affirmation, 1966, in South Africa. Here he was speaking to, as it was, they barred persons from color from attending, and I guess it originated in 1959, where persons were told to affirm the desire for justice, for freedom, despite the oppressive conditions in South Africa. And Robert Kennedy gives an incredible speech in front of his audience. The person invited him wasn't even allowed to attend because he was considered a security risk. And he said basically, the part that just struck me is that when you strike out against injustice or when you speak out on the lot of another person or persons, you create what was the term you used?
Ripple of hope.
You create a small ripple of hope.
A small ripple
which,
of
if
hope,
I remember, which across the divide of persons who have utilized similar energies, also creating that change, that becomes a current that can knock down the mightiest walls of resistance and oppression. And that left an impression on me. I'm not even sure exactly what age that really hit me. But with all that was going on in the tumultuous 60s, that was the speech that, there were others too, but that was a speech that said that the possibility of change in personal responsibility is great, but so social consciousness is important in our society and social responsibility. And
this sounds like it's a life motto for you.
I think so, and because I continue to do that, whether coaching or I try to do that. And again, I don't want to make it like it's all altruistic. There must be a desire to. I'm sure there's personal experience to me. Like, does unfairness resonate with me in my own life growing up? Yeah, it does. Was it on a systemic basis? No. I made a joke about we all had the same kid. Well, we might have had the same parents. A lot of us.
It does. Yeah, when you made that observation, that also struck me. It's like all the kids are in trouble. They all need help, and and we ourselves. It's like we all have the same family. It's like any family has stuff. We just do.
All of us, right? And it's just in so many wonderful plays. I remember. I'm sure you've seen on Golden Pond.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right,
yeah.
and just was such a memorable. And Jane Fonda, who played the daughter of her dad in real life.
In real life,
Jane.
That's right. Henry played her father. Yeah.
And the Katharine Hepburn was the wife. So at this one scene, this almost refers to something you had said earlier. They come to their house to leave their kid for the summer at their Georgia wonderful, beautiful place. And Henry Fonda's character he's starting to lose some memories, and he's kind of bitter with his daughter relationship, which was actually true in real life. There was a truth which was hard to play the part. And Jane says something that you alluded to earlier. She says to Katharine Hepburn, how come I lead a perfectly good adult life? I'm independent. And when I come here, I turn into the little chubby kid I was as a daughter, and I'm talking to my father in the same way. I'm not that independent adult.
Yeah.
And she says, well, get over it. Yeah. And just get over it. And well, our kids just don't get over it, right? It's part of, we say, well, get over it. You do this with your grades or do this. It's a little more, this was a movie, obviously, and it was touching to watch that. And that applies to us too. So, as As I say, do I keep working with these kids because I saw unfairness? Yeah, but it wasn't systemic. It was individual or part of life, but not like these kids who face a barrier that persons in power continue to keep a wall of oppression.
I think you're right.
That has the official sanction of authority.
Yeah, yep, you're absolutely right.
So I think that's the difference.
Will you tell me about your first time in court?
My first day in court, I had written, I hope I'd written a good report, and I was going to contribute orally, verbally. Terrific judge. I felt she was empathic, bright, and I don't think my child was I don't think he was at this particular meeting. Maybe it's because I don't remember, but I said at the end, the judge is looking, and she was very attentive, and I think she said something, wow, it looks like you have done a lot to make people do what they don't want to do, and she meant it as a compliment, And in that split second, I was going over thinking about my report or anything I might have said. I don't even know if I had said anything to that point, and what she said was true. I have been working with, making people do what they don't want to do. And IEP meetings or whatever, CFT meetings, again, not in a mean-spirited way, but just saying that I knew, and here's what my suggestions are. And I said, well, I remember going, yeah, I mean, that's kind of true. And, she was positive about it. And then, again, not knowing exactly the story, I turn around, and the lawyers, I guess I didn't even know the different people at the table, but they were like crowding me, as soon as I turned around, like they needed to talk to me, or something. And I go, whoa, Okay. So that's when I asked for double my salary at Casa.
Well,
right?
Okay, what? So you get like 2 cups of coffee instead of 1?
So I get 2 times 0.
2 times 0, right?
Right, but I put that on the income tax, and it amounts to something, right, or something. So.
Yeah. So I'm sure the reason why they gathered around you because they're all thinking, if only I could have him as a Casa for my kid, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Perhaps. Right.
Or even just to learn from you on how you were getting
right. If I had known you at that time, I would have said go see my agent
right.
immediately. Right, and we can probably work something out.
Yeah,
just like.
All right. So what do you do now besides your Casa work? What do you do creatively?
Oh,
what do you do? And
I love comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually, for a little while back, I was trying to get into comedy classes because people push me to do that.
Oh, my gosh. You're going to be a stand-up? Oh, my gosh. That is the hardest work.
Not. So, right. They said you can get on Johnny Carson, but it's kind of late, right?
Yeah.
So I can't do that.
Yeah, it's too late for Johnny.
And I love sports. I can't, I have been coaching. I stopped coaching, but I still play. I've played at an advanced age, even with younger kids in serious competition. So what I want, baseball or basketball.
I bet you surprise them, right? Because they think, it's going to be.
I do. That's right. And I love you're rooting for the Bengals this weekend, right? Are you following the Super Bowl?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm sorry, I am definitely not. Okay. I
think I have to close this communication.
No. Don't hang up yet. I was very pleased to see them make it. 2 weeks ago.
Right.
There were so many good games that weekend. Right, just one after
Wasn't
another.
There?
Oh yeah, right. It was just like down to the moment. But no, I'm now an LA girl. I'm rooting for the LA team.
Are you from Los Angeles?
No.
Are you from Los Angeles?
I'm from Jersey. Right. I'm from the East Coast. But
oh my gosh.
But I think just because I don't really have a real sports team anymore. I'm rooting for the team from the city where I live. I guess I don't know. Okay.
Well, because of that, I will not be at the next meeting.
You're going to boycott the meetings.
So, not boycotting the meetings. And I even wore Rams colors. I didn't mean to, but.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you this one thing that I ask all my guests.
Okay.
And I want you to dig deep for it if you can.
There's nothing deep, so I could get it. I'll be able to access it right away.
Okay. What is the one thing that no one would know about you unless you told them?
You know what? It's your last podcast, which you were kind enough to send me, which was my vetting process, right?
Yes.
Was my thing.
I'm so glad I passed. Yeah.
Okay. So I noticed that you'll get your grade later in the mail. Don't say it. So I hear this guy, and he's talking about martial arts. Yes? Am I talking about the same person? And
yep. Yeah, he's a crypto kid, but he was an MMA fighter. And I think
yes. So he mentioned Muay Thai, if you remember. And Muay Thai is a Thai boxing.
Yes.
So in the early 80s, I played baseball, basketball, whatever. And I inadvertently got involved because I was living near me in Thai boxing, Muay Thai, and I did it for a number of years. So I was in my early 30s, which was just like 5 years ago.
Okay, that's super aggressive, violent, dangerous fighting, right?
That's right. It is. But I didn't. So actually, Jayne, so they said to me, it was great conditioning kind of thing. And it took,
you're like a nice Jewish guy, a school psychologist, and you're doing the Thai boxing,
let me explain
in the ring to kill people, essentially.
It was in the ring. And so they said to me, earlier I was flattered, but they said, would you like to, on the weekends, would you really like to go to fight in the ring? And I said to them, I just don't see going to work the next week with black and blue eyes, broken bones, broken ankles. So I said, I don't see that in for me. But I did love the conditioning part. And when I got in with the professionals, like from Thailand, I just asked them, and I'm not super religious, but I was able to pray for them not to hurt me. So I just said in the way. So I said, please, just so that
is
was
surprising.
Good conditioning.
Yeah, that is surprising. I would not have guessed that for sure.
If you mention this at our meeting, I will just deny it.
Okay, well,
so don't even.
I might ask to see some moves. I don't know. Well,
okay, all right. We can do that.
We can.
I might with Hollywood stuff. I can probably have like whoever Tom Cruise has used to stand in for him. I can do that. So
I want to thank you for not only your life work, right? Like your life work of being in schools and helping out kids, and now retired and continuing to do that. It's It's quite honorable.
Jayne, thank you. This is much about you. I mean, I see your emotion, and for me, that's pinnacle. For some other people, but it shows your authenticity, and you do such a wonderful job on the ones I listened to, and I could tell right away that it was a professional, and with your producer, and I was hoping to be in a green room where they could do like some makeup kind of things, but that's maybe
we can do that. We can do it next time. We'll put we'll get some, special effects, maybe some dancers, and, make it a different experience.
Or I could co-host.
Or you could also
right. You could have, or when your contract gets better and you only work
when you only work
3
once
days
in a while, yeah.
Right, like Carson, a few days a month, and
All right, thank you so much. Thank you,
Jayne. Thank you so much.
If you see something, say something. If you suspect a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you want to know more about becoming a CASA anywhere in the country, go to nationalcasagal.org, and in LA, casala.org. And if you want to know more about becoming a foster parent, check out the National Foster Parent Association at nfponline.org. There's also faithfosterfamilies.org and adoptuskids.org. There's tons of other information online as well, so you can just hunt around. We also want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful original music. You can find her music on Spotify or Instagram at Christina Aposto. And also thank you to Yukon Har for his engineering. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear and you find it as valuable as we do, please rate us and hit subscribe. You can also make a donation at bonusbabies.org. See you next time.